Hey guys, welcome back to a special episode of Nuanced Nonsense. Sorry, I have to turn on the light. Yeah, if you're into lighting, please hit us up. Anyway, yeah, welcome to a special episode of Nuanced Nonsense. We're not experts and we just like talking. And yeah, the 10th episode is like approaching, so we just wanted to release this episode, kind of just talk about, how far we've come, I guess, kind of talking about like, providing some updates, but also saying, kind of looking back at like, how this whole podcasting started, kind of like our expectations and like, what has happened now and even just like what we have planned for the future. So,
yeah, what this guy said.
Yeah. Thanks for the support. But yeah, some updates were like, we have an intro song in the works, so keep an eye out for that. The song itself is based off this, it's a song by a Korean band called Hyego, and it's called Gang Gang Shio. And basically, I kind of stumbled upon the song in the summer. It's basically like, it's not really the song that drew me in. Like, the song is a good song for sure, but it's like, it was the music video. So the music video is literally like a camera following the band as they walk down this, it's like an alleyway.
It's like a super long like runway.
It's like a super long runway basically, and they're just like singing to their song. But what was like really funny about it is like they're wearing like these like really flashy outfits. They have like straight faces and like they're just like, they're kind of just jamming along in like the middle of the road with like no concern of like what other people are like thinking. And like the funny part is like there's even like two guys in the music video on the side and they're literally just there to like clap to the beat, but like, they're not holding any instruments, so like they're basically doing nothing, right? And like we got into the song and then we're like, we realized the song was like in English. And it was actually talking about like some like relatively like meaningful stuff, kind of like about like not giving up even in like the face of the circumstances. And yeah, I think like this semester has both been like pretty like hard and busy for us. I don't really know if I've talked about much on the podcast, but I've hinted a little bit like recruiting like being like pretty difficult for me. Like not feeling like I'm like interviewing as well as like my peers, or like having confidence issues with like, like just being like competent, do you have anything?
Yeah, like I think the semester like academically hasn't been that difficult, but then there's been like struggles with like doing this. Like we mentioned it here and there, like editing took a lot out of us in the sense that like we're not skilled editors by any like means of the
we do the most basic editing. Like you can tell this is a one take episode and that still takes some time for us to do. Yeah.
Speaking of editing, if you have any editing skills you'd like to edit for us or teach us just about editing, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we do understand like, this video, like the stuff we upload on YouTube is literally just us sitting here. Sometimes we don't even look at the camera and like, it's just a one take. But like, yeah, if you want to, help us, set up multiple cameras and like we can help edit, do some, close-ups or like, do some flashy transitions, hit us up. We are looking for ways to like improve and spice our podcast. But yeah, basically like, we were like, oh, we really like the sound of the song. We like
the vibe
of the song, and we like the content of the song, right? So we reached out to like one of our friends and we're like, hey, like I think it'd be really cool if you could base our intro song like off of this song. Obviously just like sampling it so we don't get copyrighted. Like yeah, we just saw like this song. It's like it like kind of speaks to us like as people, and we're like, okay, that'd be perfect for us to do for this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, just keep an eye out on that. Further updates are like we're hoping to market ourselves better. I guess like we know that we're not the most present on social media. Like sometimes like we'll post like when guests film, but like when guests film and when the episode's actually released are like different timings. So yeah, just being more active and like letting people be more aware of like when like what our schedule is and like when we're gonna release an episode and stuff like that. Because like yeah, I guess at the beginning it's like yeah, we kind of like talked about it a lot, so like everyone knew when the first episode was coming out. But I guess now as time has gone by, like we get that like people are busy and like their mind isn't always gonna be on our podcast. Yeah. So yeah, we're just hoping to help encourage that. And is there any other updates?
Yeah, we have off of that really quick. We have like a like a small but like consistent viewer base, and we're really appreciative of that. But we want to also like branch outwards to like maybe people we don't know as well, or just people who don't know us at all, because I think we love just talking, and branching out to more people will allow us to bring on more guests. And it's like we want, like, if you don't know us that well, or like, you know, if like, because we're thinking about guests all the time. We have like for a while we had a really backed up schedule, and now it's cleared up a little because it's like ending the semester. But like we want to branch out like our guests and our viewership, just so that like we can have more diverse perspectives, because that's what we love talking about. And then speaking of further updates, episode hasn't aired yet, but the person that we do a sponsorship with, we're having like a promo code that's going to be coming up, so keep on the lookout for that. We're trying to help each other, you know, like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So that's going on there.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, you know, especially like back to what you're saying about like viewership. Yeah, like a lot of times, like, you know, like we film a lot of episodes back to back, so that's in case like if you realize like some of our episodes are like not super time relevant, meaning because like the event has passed. But yeah, like I think like, you know, like we might take some time to like, you know, like kind of like restructure our podcast and like rethink about how we can like better I guess diversify and like, you know, grow as a podcast, because yeah, maybe a lot of our content might seem kind of similar, but that's because like we're filming a lot of it at the same time with like similar groups of people. But yeah, so like, yeah, if you like know us or you don't know us super well, but like you feel interested in like being on a podcast, like just, you know, just hit us up, you know. It's a pretty chill time. Like we talk about whatever, and I think what's more important is like we're having a genuine like meaningful conversation, whether it's like something deep, something like interesting, or something lighthearted. You know, a conversation is a conversation, and it honestly is like a window into like, you know, how people think and like their soul.
Like even then, a lot of guests worry, especially when they come here. They're like ready. They're sitting down. They're like, "Oh, how am I going to talk for an hour?" You know, like, how am I going to do that? I don't even talk for an hour on a normal basis. And then by the end of it, they're like, "Oh, that felt like 10 minutes. I could talk forever." Like, that's not a concern. It like even when people we don't know as well, it's never been a concern. So don't worry about that. And then speaking of concerns, though, our schedule was backed up for a while, and then it recently got unbacked up, and it's partially because we haven't been like packing it as much, because we're getting not necessarily burned out, but it's like, you know, things are piling up because we're still in school. So if we do take like a short break or hiatus, like it's, you know, for those types of reasons. We're not trying to like leave anyone hanging or anything.
But on the bright side, I think we have enough episodes that, you know, whoever, you know, God bless you if you want to. If you want to binge our podcast, you can. And if you do binge our podcast, please let us know. I want to know who you are.
Yeah, because like we do know the people that like consistently view our like podcast, and we're very grateful for you guys. We know who you are.
But yeah, I guess like kind of like wrapping up this update time, let's talk a little bit about like, you know, kind of like our expectations for this podcast.
They've changed greatly from the very beginning.
Kind of like expectations, like how it looks now, and even like, yeah, I guess maybe even wrapping it back up into like future stuff.
When this guy say how it looks, we're still in the same apartment. That's not gonna change.
Yeah. We will still be in this apartment with like, you know, a little trash bag on the kitchen and the side, and you know Ben's mug in the background. Yeah, you'll see all of that for sure. But I guess, yeah, even thinking maybe like not maybe not how it looks, but like what are some future goals we have, right? Because I think one of the worst things to be able to be in a position of is like stasis
or stagnation.
Sorry, I lost the ability to pronounce words. But yeah, kind of just doing things in the routine just because like we've been doing it, you know, like obviously we're not like widely successful in a remote sense. So yeah, I think this is like, and we may never be, right? But I think that's like the perfect time to continue trying stuff for like our own personal growth. And yeah, it'll definitely be like a memory we'll look fondly on. But
from the very start, our expectations of this were we just wanted to like broadcast genuine conversation. Like that goal hasn't changed at all, but it's the manner in which we do it, you know? And we filmed, we haven't released 20 plus episodes, but we filmed 20 plus episodes. And we felt like we've been able to manage conversation a lot better, like especially in the more recent ones as compared to like the very start. The very start was just like, like very on point. Like, hey, I messaged 2 friends like, hey, let's start this right now because me and Alex didn't want to wait. We got really impatient, and then it was like very, very like impromptu, no structure, no preparation, and just our expectations in that kind of way. But now we're starting to like prepare more. Do like some of our guests have even brought in their own levels of preparation. So we just want to up the level of like I guess structure and like preparedness that we have for each episode.
Yeah, that's definitely a future goal. As you said, we are getting better at that, but I still think like personally I think we got a lot better at winging, better at capturing the flow of the conversation to the point where, like we rely on that very heavily.
That's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. I think it's like a good thing that like we're not very rigid, but I guess it would be nice to have some podcasts with like maybe more structure, more of a theme, because like I guess it's like hard to predict when like you're always going with the flow. But yeah, like we talked about this on the first episode, but kind of just going into this podcast, we had like a lot of deep talks, not necessarily deep, like interesting whatever talks, and we just thought it was cool to like be able to capture that. Like Ben even started like literally recording our conversations on our phone. I was like, oh, like we can just start a podcast, because that's what I thought podcasts were, just literally you talking with someone and there's like a recording. After this I realized like there's a little more work to that than just like recording a conversation, but I think that was the original heart. There was a little different expectations. Like originally we wanted to be more of a cultural podcast, like yes, we did want to capture conversations, but like we wanted to talk about like Asian American representation, or like kind of like what it means to be Asian American in like the current times and in college. Mainly because like that's something like we grew to care a lot more about in college, because like
not to say that we're never going to talk about it again. It's just that we realized as we did more and more of these episodes,
test episodes.
Even now, like we only touch on it like when like it's comfortable for everyone and it feels more natural.
Basically, like what he says, just like we realized that like not every podcast episode is going to be about that, mainly because like if we want diverse perspectives and different people, like they're going to provide like different experiences and different stuff that matters to them, right? And for some people, like Asian American culture representation is not like that super high on the priority list, and like that's okay. People have different values, but like that's ultimately what makes their perspective more like meaningful. So that's when we're like, okay, let's broaden out our podcast, right? Like let's just talk about interesting or deep stuff. Like I just thought like, okay, if we can have an interesting deep talk with like every single person on this podcast, even the people we don't know, like that'd be really cool, right? So we kind of broadened that. So I guess it was originally just gonna be a more serious podcast. We would just talk about like deeper, interesting, controversial stuff every episode. But I think during one of the test episodes, like we kind of realized like some people like they're more suited for the lighthearted, comedic, like fun episodes, right? And then I think at that point, like our goals for the podcast changed a little bit, right? Because before it was like very much for us, like how can we grow as people for this? Like not as much emphasis on the guests or making them feel comfortable, but I think after seeing like, hey, like we're kind of squandering these people's chances. We were like, hey, how about we switch it up? Because like we'll have episodes like between the two of us where we can talk about whatever controversial or interesting deep topic we want. How about we let them take more ownership, or like we let them talk about what they want to talk about? Because like I feel like everyone has the capacity for like interesting conversation, right?
100%.
Like it's very pretentious to think that like only a select few not shallow people can do that, right? But it's just a matter of like who do you open up to, like who you close with, right? And like when you open up to someone, like that's something like that's when like you feel like you're able to be vulnerable with them, and you feel comfortable with them, right? So we feel like, hey, let's ask them what they want to talk about or what they're interested in, and that way they can be more comfortable with us and be themselves. Because I feel like most people, when they are themselves, like they're able to talk for a while, right? Like that's how like everyone's like feels worried that like they can't talk for long, but like in the end they're able to end up talking for like an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half.
Oh yeah.
Like one of the recent episodes we recorded, like, I wasn't even confident in like the topic like we prepared. So I was like, okay, let's have these backup topics. So I made it as long as possible. Then I brought on the topic like he wanted to talk about. But it turns out like he prepared pretty well. And like it was actually like we let him be himself and we were able to talk about it for a while, you know? And like we had to like cut it short because like that podcast could have been for 2 hours.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So
honestly, all of them can go for like 2 hours, 3 hours.
So I think even like seeing this like not capacity, but even seeing this play out in like real life like episodes that we're actually going to publish was like really encouraging because it's like A, it feels like we're kind of on the right path, and B is like yeah, like we can continue doing stuff like this. And like I think, you know, in the future is like we want to kind of continue going in that direction, especially with people like we're not as close to, you know.
And Alex touched on this earlier, talking about episodes between us. We might do that more. We're thinking about maybe like doing more episodes between just us, and then, you know, upload maybe twice a week sometimes. Just put our episodes out there, and then you still come on with like guests, so we can, you know, offer these multiple perspectives. Because me and Alex just want to talk about whatever we want sometimes, and you know, it's sometimes like we like guests, and it's just a matter of the time that we're filming.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of related, but I think something that like people kept asking me and Ben when like we started this podcast was like, what is your podcast about, right? Because you know, like a lot of podcasts, they'll be like there's one really famous podcast on Spotify, and it's about like murder mysteries, like unsolved crime cases. There's some podcasts that are purely about sports. There's some podcasts about current events. So that question was just like what is this podcast for, right? And like as I said earlier, it's just like, I mean, probably because like we didn't really know, but it's like I guess we just wanted this to be just a podcast that just captured genuine conversation, right? So I think in a way is like we were never really trying to make it big. You know?
Yeah.
Even now is like we have like 33 subscribers right now, but like you know that's perfectly fine with like me and Ben.
Yeah.
Mainly because like I'm grateful that even like 30 people bothered to subscribe to our YouTube channel and even like look us up on Spotify, you know? Like if you think about like people with like 100K subscribers, like that's crazy, you know?
Yeah, that's
like,
wild.
Like a whole city, assuming everyone on the YouTube counts like an actual person, but a whole city of people, like a big suburb, like follows your content, you know? Like, and 30 people, like that's like a class, you know? Like if you like actually count out like the number of people, like that's pretty insane, you know? Like I definitely going into this, like one of the biggest fears we had was like, will we lose interest in this? You know, like how passionate are we going to be going in? Because like, yes, it's like one step to even start this podcast, but
the next step is continuing.
Next step is continuing, right? It's like doing something for like 3 times is like, it may seem like not a lot, but we're releasing stuff weekly. That's like 3 weeks of time, right? Like a month, like when you live in the moment, like that feels like a while. So even like, you know, being like, yeah, how long can we be consistent for? Like even being like, wow, we're almost near 10 episodes. Like we've recorded more than 10 episodes.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have a lot more to come to is like, you know, that's pretty crazy. Even just being like, feeling like, oh, like the podcast isn't even like a job, right? Like a lot of times, like, I don't know about you, but like I'll have like a rough day and like I'm on the podcast, like it feels like a break, you know? Like,
yeah.
I'm hearing people talk about stuff like I wouldn't normally think about, and like, oh, like that's pretty cool, right? Like I can hear more about like, I don't know, like K-dramas or like music production, stuff like that. It's like stuff like I wouldn't normally want to talk about because like, you know, that's not really like my sphere, right?
Yeah.
But like even being able to hear more about that and be like, oh, this is interesting, like I think that just goes to show like what people are passionate about can really like affect you as well. Yeah, what do you think?
I think like I agree 100%. Like I've like one of the episodes we talked about like high fashion, and I don't know anything about high fashion, but by the end of it I was like, we were really like trying to delve into like why it's like relevant and stuff like that, like, you know, meme culture like really influencing high fashion and like keeping it relevant within like society. There's so many things like you don't think about, and that's why we want to bring on more people, is because like that, you know, just talking to different people brings in these different things you don't think about, and I think that's super cool. And like to commemorate the 10th episode, that's like, we've been doing this for more than 2 months.
Like it's been, yeah, I think our first episode released in like late September, but we've really been doing this since
Early August.
End of August, or when when school started. Right when school started.
End of August might be.
So, and like, yeah, we're even thinking about doing this. Like keeping an eye out for like an episode in Dallas, like where we're both from. It's like we even planning on doing it over like breaks. So even seeing how this isn't just like, this might not just be like a college senior year thing, but just like, I don't know, even just like a passion project as we do once we, I guess eventually go our separate ways into like post-grad life. So yeah, I think it's just exciting like how much potential there is in the future. Yeah.
Because this is our first real milestone.
For sure. Like in a way it's like, I don't really know what I was expecting, like, oh, like, will we last this long? Like, I didn't think, like, we would stop, but it's almost like, I feel like for a lot of things, like, when things end, like, they end very quietly,
Yeah.
Like, you have a week where, like, you don't do a podcast, then it becomes 2 weeks, you don't do a podcast, like, 3 weeks, you don't do a podcast, and then all of a sudden, you're just like, you know what, like, no one really cares, like, why bother, right? And the way is, like, I think it's a blessing that we were able to do this as like hosts, like have a dual host format, but even just like us being roommates and us being like pretty close friends, like I feel like we keep each other accountable in many ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that the duo host format is something that we especially didn't know how to manage in the very beginning. We had a lot of struggles, a lot of talks just talking about like, oh, should I be asking a lot of questions? Should I just be supporting you? Should I like be the main person? Like, stuff like that. And we realized that like, we shouldn't define it super like rigidly, but more just like, who's feeling it in the moment. It's kind of like in basketball, like who's hot, you just let them go.
For sure. Like, yeah, I remember something a lot, a very beginning podcast when those like, I guess mainly your friends, or people I didn't know as well. It was like, I just let you talk a lot. And I kind of just sat there for at least, I was really quiet for usually for those episodes, like the first half of the podcast. And then once y'all found something I could kind of latch myself onto, like I asked more questions. But I think over time I realized that like it's okay, like for me, because I was feeling uncomfortable in that supporting role, because like, is this really like my podcast, or am I just like a third guest who doesn't talk often, right? So I think even feeling more comfortable like of asking more questions at the start, because I realized like when you ask those questions at the start, like you can help dictate the flow of the conversation, while also still making them like interested in some way. So yeah, I think that was like one change like we kind of had to experience, just like is there like a main guy asking the question, like a supporting guy? Do we like reverse it, like who's the main guy? Or even just like, does it matter, I remember even listening to some podcasts where like there's usually like where podcasts with like two hosts, like one host is literally doing all the talking and the other person just goes like yeah, like kind of like hyping up like the conversation, right? So I guess something I realized just like podcasts are just very general, like we're not really doing this as a school project where we have to adhere to like a rubric,
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know, kind of touching upon like identity. It's just like, I don't think we're still finding like our identity in this podcast,
Oh, still for sure. Like even though we reached this milestone, it's like a small one, and we just want to commemorate it because like we're really glad the guests took time out of their schedule to come, but also we wanted to like, I guess, honor ourselves in like getting this far. But like getting this far doesn't mean it's like the end all be all.
Oh, for sure. Like
yeah.
As I said, like we'll be doing this for a while, so,
we'll be finding our rhythm.
Yeah. So I think even then it's just like, I think something that I really thought about doing this podcast is like, the intrinsic motivations as to why you start something, right? Like I feel like we kind of touched upon this like many times during the podcast before, but just like kind of think about like, look at the old days of YouTube, right? Like think about when like Kev Jumbo was literally recording vlogs on his webcam, like not even a professional webcam, and like for him it was just crazy how like he was just doing stuff in his free time, and he got like 1 million subscribers, right? And I think it's crazy because like back then it's just like you just did things on your own time, and like look at it now, like it's very much like I release a video every Tuesday, or like I have 2 videos a week, Monday and Wednesday. Like keep an eye out, click the bell for notification, like notification squad or whatever. So I feel like, I don't know, I think it's like interesting because like I feel like when we told people we were starting a podcast at the very beginning, like I think the question they asked us were like coming from like the latter perspective, right? Like, how are you gonna make this big? Like, how are you gonna make this like a side hustle or like a main hustle in some way? Like, how are you gonna become famous, right? But
that was never really the goal.
I don't think, yeah, as we said earlier, like that wasn't really the goal in mind. Mainly because I don't think we really believe that we'll make it big. I also don't know if we want to make it big.
Yeah.
Fame is scary. But I don't know. I just think it's like, I don't want to sound pretentious or anything, but just like, I think doing things for the sake of doing things, like maybe that sounds like you're like going through the motions, but just like something that just feels nice to like just do things without like a specific goal in mind, right?
Yeah.
Like all the goals you mentioned have been very nebulous and like, personal growth, like helping other people, like giving back to the community. Like those are all very broad things, right? But I think, something like I think we both realized in college is just like, what does it mean to like, what does the journey mean? Like something like you hear the phrase all the time, just like it's the journey that really matters, not the destination. They're like, what does that even mean, right? Like, we're not doing all this to like, get AdSense and like have consistent viewership. So like we can, if we're unemployed, we can like make some money on the side. But a lot of it's just like, how can we, like, how will a podcast like help us grow as people, And like, I guess like, yeah, like everything comes to an end at some point. Like everything, like nothing big lasts forever. But I think in a way it's just like, we're okay with like going with the flow and seeing how things go.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I guess kind of like wrapping up, I guess what you to expect from the podcast in the future and like, what, we hope to see in the podcast is just like we're still growing, like we know we haven't made it big at all whatsoever, but we're just really happy that we've even gotten this far.
Yeah.
I think doing something for like 10 weeks straight is like impressive,
Yeah,
like,
and like what's even crazier is that this is, I don't want to say it's like my first passion project, but it's like my first major one that I've like dedicated lots of hours into and like, made it something like, yes, I like TA, but that's like, TAing. This is completely like my own thing. Something that like I've gone out of my way to do on my own.
Like not necessarily something that like you do for the sake of doing, like, oh, this can pad on my resume, but just like, hey, like I just want to do this, like no strings attached. So, as they say, like it takes like a month to build a consistent habit. And, I think since we were approaching the 2-month, 3-month mark, like this definitely has become more than just a habit in our lives. So yeah, I'm just really happy, and excited for like what's to come.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of cool things that we want to do and like hopefully we get there. Like the updates are like, just the beginning.
For sure. Yeah. Anyway, I guess,
transition to something else.
Yeah, kind of like, thinking about, I guess, what we would normally talk about on the podcast, but like kind of related to what we're talking about, like, what do you think about like impact and legacy?
Impact, like how so?
Like, like, oh, the saying how like when people forget you, like that's when you truly die. Like when you live forever, like you live forever through like the memories of other people. Like, I kind of thought about this like as we're talking about like the podcast in a way, and just like even though like we're not doing this to be like famous or get big, like I guess like it's like pretty like implicit, and that like we hope that like our podcast can like help people in some way, like as we're gaining new perspectives, like they can also gain a new perspective, right? In a way, it's just like I was like kind of wondering about like impact and legacy, like as us as like individuals, like not like kind of like us specifically, but like people in general. Kind of just like, what do you think it means to like have an impact on someone, I guess? I
think it's more along the lines of like, if you attribute something like to someone else, that's super vague. It's more along the lines of like, let's say you do something for person A, and person A like attributes what happened to them to you. I think that's like some level of like impact, right?
So
and like another thing that you told me one time was like it's an honor to have impact on someone, because like it's not every day that you just go and impact someone. Impact itself like implies something like, you know, drastic. It's not like something small like a dent, you know? Like if you make an impact on someone, it should like have some ramifications, you know, on like their overall who they are. Like I know myself, like I've been impacted by lots of people, and like, but like it's only very few that have like really, really like done something for me that's like really impacted my psyche. And so I view impact more along the lines of like something, I don't want to say drastic, but a little bit bigger, less small scale.
So like it's not something like, it's obviously something very personal, but it's like not something that like can happen every day.
Because I don't think impact is an everyday occurrence.
Or even maybe like
maybe it can happen every day, but that's like rare.
Like maybe like I said, maybe not even like an every year occurrence, right?
Yeah, because like you live your life in routine, and so it's really hard to break that routine. And then so unless something comes along and just miraculously you come across it, and then it just has a massive impact on you and like changes the way either you view your own life, view something else, just like, you know, perspective, adds a new perspective.
For sure.
What about you?
I guess like the reason why, like this has been on my mind for a while, right? Because I've told you this before, but like something I've really been wondering about as like the senior end is like, what is my impact and legacy in college, and like what is it overall, you know? Because I think like as like an introvert, my tendency is to like kind of be at home a lot, or like, you know, only make a couple like deep relationships. Kind of just like I don't really like my instinct is not necessarily to like expand my reach or like go out my way to like connect with people, you know. But I guess like, you know, obviously like if you want to like be remembered, I guess, you know, you kind of need to do that. Like, you can't be at home all the time. And this isn't necessarily like me being like oh like me being like, oh, I'm a super big wallflower or anything, but it's just like it's kind of just like me wondering, just like, you know, after college, like how many of these people will even like remember me or even remember our interactions fondly, right? Because in a way, like that is just like a simple example of impact. It's just like, I guess like even like getting someone to feel some way about you, like other than indifference, like that is a form of impact and legacy. So I was just wondering, like for myself, is like how am I doing that, right? And kind of like maybe like midway through this semester, I was kind of like wondering, like, have I really done that? You know, it's just like, you know, I feel like I do a lot of stuff. We mentioned this podcast before, but I feel like the idea of transactional relationships is just like, I feel like I've had a lot of that in my life where I do something for someone and they do something for me. But if we stop doing it, like our relationship doesn't progress any further than that, you know?
Or starts to like teeter off.
It starts to like basically be like we're strangers again. It's like, obviously that's not preferable, right? Because like at some point, like you want to go past this transactional relationship and like have a genuine relationship, like be friends, you know? So, you know, I was kind of having like a little bit of an existential crisis, I guess, where I was just like, I don't want to say like has these 4 years been a waste, but like what have I been doing with my life, right? Especially since like everyone's always telling us that like once you graduate from college, it's going to be so hard to have like community, have these type of relationships, like better treasure what you have now. And I was like, I don't even know if I have that now. So like, does that mean I'll never get it? You know? So I guess I was just really worried and sad. And like, I was talking to Ben about this, but I guess something I realized is like, you know, seeing in his like, he's expressed, like, I think you expressed to me like you don't even know if you've done that, but it's just like from an outside perspective, it's just like, even like seeing when he does do that, like, it's definitely like an honor, you know?
And most of the time you don't even know.
Yeah, you don't, right?
Like, I know for sure, like, people have impacted me. Like, odds are they don't even know they have. And that's just how it tends to be. Like, if I've had an impact on someone, I for sure don't know. But, like, that's what makes it even more of an honor if you do know. And so that's why, like, you shouldn't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
I think I told this to Alex, too. Like, it's not, you know, thinking about it won't necessarily change it. Just, like, you know, go and have an impact on someone. Easier said than done, but, you know.
Just go be yourself, I guess.
I guess
Like,
go be yourself is like
go
the best way to put
go
it.
contribute to the community. Get off your lazy ass.
Because if you are yourself, you know, someone's appreciating it.
Mm-hmm.
You might be impacting someone you don't even know.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Even just like small actions can lead to like big things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So even if like, I guess even part of like what I was saying is just like, I think when you're very deliberate about stuff, like you may not end up getting the result you want, right? Because like I feel like people inherently inside, like they don't like being like emotionally manipulated or whatever. So like they're not necessarily going to be like, oh, I know this person is trying to leave an impact to me. I'll be impacted, you know? It's like, I think it's like the little things you do that like, if they can tell you have a genuine heart, then like, that's all that really matters, right? So, I don't know. I guess like, just going off of this is just like, I guess
What
I
did
was
you take
just-
away from it?
I guess what I took away was like, I guess I should just chill more. Like, not like chill as in be at an apartment more, but just like, sometimes I keep on forgetting how young we are, you know? Like, I guess if people usually live to like 80, you know, hopefully we live to 80 or beyond. But I think something about that is just like, you know, like we're like 1/6 of our life. Like we're not halfway there yet, you know? Like we're halfway to being halfway there. So it's like, I don't know, in some way it's just like not feeling like this is the end all be all, right? Because I think there's a big bad tendency in college students, like when you're a senior, like you feel like you know it all, or you're supposed to know it all, and for the most part you don't, right? The future is so uncertain. It's like there's no way. Like I feel like college is really just a time where like you learn about yourself. You know, you learn about how people are.
Mm-hmm.
You learn about how different communities interact. Like hopefully. So I think in some ways, it's just like this is really the starting point. You know.
Yeah.
And like in a lot of ways, it's like I feel like it's kind of ageist to be like I have to live to the fullest for like these certain years of my life, like college or like my 20s, parts of my 30s. Like I think like, you know, your life doesn't end like when you become middle age or you have kids. Like you're still growing like as a person, right? Like I think something I read before was just like when you're a kid, like you're teaching your parents like a lot too, you know? Like you're making them more appreciative of like their past. They learn what it means to like love and care about someone, and in a way like literally shaping a person, like having an impact on them, right? So in a way it's just like, you know, even if you don't have kids, it's just like I think there's a lot of life to live and a lot of impact potentially to be had. So in conclusion, that basically leads to more doors to be open and more questions to be asked, but I think I'm like more okay with it now.
Speaking of senior year, how do you feel that we know it's ending? Like it all things come to an end, and like we're basically halfway there to it ending.
Mm-hmm. How do I feel? I don't know. It doesn't feel like I've really processed it, you know? Like I don't really think about how like I won't be in this apartment next year, you know?
Yeah.
Like I won't be in West Campus. Like I won't be rooming with you next year. Like sometimes I do, and it's a little saddening, but like
Same.
I like quickly move on because I don't enjoy being sad. But also because like there's stuff to be done. But I don't know. It's like it's a lot of feelings, you know, because it's just like I think graduation is like something like you always look at that like it's a far away goal. Like I'll do it eventually, but not anytime soon, right? But now that it is coming up, I'm still like, okay, there's still next semester, right? But it's just very strange because like I don't really know if I'm like ready for like post grad, and like I'm not used to like when you're in school, like everything builds up to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you literally, like I literally view things as just like year, summer, and like
Even academia itself is like prereq for this, which is another prereq for this, which is a prereq for this. And it's like things just stack up onto each other. It's like kind of like rungs in a ladder.
Mm-hmm. Like you are basically following a plan, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what gives a lot of people angst. Sometimes like sometimes they don't follow the plan, they don't have a backup, or they don't really know what to do, right? But in a way, it's like, yes, you can plan the rest of your life, I guess, but it's like, it's so much more like big scale, right? Because I feel like once you get into the real world, it's like, you're still like that kid who like was in the system and now he's like in a completely different system or no system, right? Like you're not gonna change the moment you get your diploma. So I don't know, like kind of just going back to what you're saying, is like part of me feels excited in a way where it's like I feel like for most of my life I've had to deal with people who like seem like they know what they're doing and I don't. I'm like, we're all in the same field now, right? I mean, part of me is obviously scared because like I think this is bad, but like I think part of the reason why I like being young is that like you have a built-in excuse for failure and like you have a built-in excuse as to like not knowing what's going on, right? But once you're older, you're expected to. So I guess I'm kind of nervous about that. But at the same time, like from what I've heard from people is like no one really knows what they're doing. Like you just get better at faking it.
Yeah.
I don't really know how I feel about that because I think I like to be an honest, transparent man. But I think in some ways like I guess I can respect that and that like you're calm even when like things don't seem to be going your way because like it's not the end all be all. Like you're not necessarily gonna die if like things don't go your way, and even if you do, this is morbid, but I guess you lived a life,
Yeah.
Like if you did the bare minimum, like as I said earlier, it's like you still left an impact on people and you still made memories,
What was really interesting is that when I was a freshman, I don't know if this applied to you, but the seniors just seemed so well put together. And they just seemed very, like as you said, calm and very just like, like a guiding presence. And then now the shoes are flipped, I realize like why upperclassmen, especially seniors, tend not to go out to things, just stick within their own people because like everyone's afraid for the future. And, showing that in front of like freshmen that recently got into college isn't exactly the best way to go about it. And also it makes you less confident because sometimes you run into freshmen that are very accomplished and like they make you doubt yourself too. Like I know I've run into a couple freshmen, they're just like very stellar and like everything they do. And so it makes me doubt myself, but like it's not a reason to stay away from them. It's just a reason like to be even more calm, You need to just like be like I'm not saying less of yourself, but more just like don't panic about it, As someone said on a previous podcast, like things will work itself out, Like you're not gonna just live your life in complete like unknown forever. Like things will work out. Like just don't sweat the details way too much.
I think a lot of those do expectations. It's just like don't be so attached to them that they become your reality. Like, live in reality, I know this may sound rich coming from us. Like we haven't experienced a lot of life, but I think even dealing with like the failures of the semester is like that's taught us a lot. Like we're still alive, sitting here and like open to like whatever's to come. So yeah, I think even just being open to like those new things, I think I don't really know how to put this into words, but like in a way, I think just like growing up, like you're just used to people following what people have told you, But I think the older you get, you realize that like there's so many ways to do something. Like it doesn't really matter as long as you learn something from whatever way you're doing. So I don't know. I guess even like, okay, this is actually unrelated, but kind of related. But like,
okay.
What do you think about the idea of like giving advice that you're not super experienced in? Like a common example is like love, right?
Oh.
Right. But even this can even go in other categories, right? Where like, I don't know, like being a basketball executive who's never played basketball professionally, or like helping someone write a program but you've never taken the CS class before. Like, what do you feel about that?
I don't think having like, for example, let's say we go back to the basketball perspective, just because you've never professionally played basketball doesn't mean you don't know what you're talking about. Like there's a lot of like ways to gain expertise in the field besides the most like well-run way of doing things in that field. And just because you have, for example, played basketball professionally doesn't make you great at everything else associated with basketball. For example, Michael Jordan, just because he played, there's a lot of arguments that he's like the greatest player of all time. But is he the greatest owner of all time? Not exactly. But just because he played basketball professionally doesn't immediately include him in this like cast of like elite people who can like manage entire organizations, because it's not the same skill set, even though it's basketball related. So it doesn't necessarily preclude you from giving advice on something. And like to love, for example, you don't need to be in a relationship to know how to love. Like that's like a major pitfall that a lot of people like knock on other people for. Like not any specific people I know, but like I just see it in like media a lot. They like you just like they say your advice is invalid because you've never been in a relationship, but that's not true. Like you know how to love people. You know how to like hopefully you know how to love your family and they know how to love you too. And that's already one instance of like what it feels like to be loved, to be cared for. And then let's say this extends to your friends, like your friends are the perfect example of it, because like your family, sometimes a lot of people are distant from their family or just like not nearly as close to their family as their friends. And so like your friends provide a really nice window into like how you choose to love another person. And like giving advice from that doesn't make it invalid. I think it's perfect. Like getting advice from a single person seems ironic at first, but it's really all not that bad. Plus like love advice and just advice generally is like a lot of it, like 90% is like abstract, like 10% of it is like still abstract, but you took meaning from it and that's what you follow.
Yeah.
Because abstract advice is just all about like what you can take from it, because all of it is very vague, very abstract. Not a lot of it is very concrete. And if it is concrete, sometimes it doesn't even like feel like it applies to you. It feels like you've already tried that before or something. So it's just a matter of like what you take from it, and that's the real advice, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. I brought this up because like I realized we're talking a lot about post-grad stuff that we haven't been through.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, does our perspective matter? But
it totally does. Like you don't have like people who were seniors before us weren't a senior, and then like they weren't a senior before they were a senior. They just became a senior and then they figured it out. And us, like, we weren't like post-grad before we were post-grad,
Yeah.
We don't have experience going into it. We just figure it out along the way, and then it doesn't make our advice invalid. I think it's just my way of looking at it.
I think I also kind of view it similarly. I guess I was just asking, kind of like wondering what like potential people might think or listeners might think. But I think something I read on like Reddit before that really stood out to me was like, it was an NBA team and they hired, I think I don't remember what team it was. I think it was the Spurs or the Kings, but they hired a woman to be under their coaching staff.
Oh, you sent me this article.
Yeah. But like not only that, but like she had little front office or coaching experience. She was part of the analytics team. Now a lot of people are like this is a bad idea, like she doesn't have either experience in these two regards. Like why should she be in this field, right? And I think two comments like what they said really stood out to me was like, if you're only really giving opportunities to the same people for like experience, like of course only that group will be prepared, and you're never gonna want to hire from other groups because they won't have experience. But that's because of you, like you didn't want to take that step, right? And two, it might be better if they don't have enough experience in that regard, because how they view things will be inherently different, because like they're not looking at it with the same goal in mind like you do, right? Like something I read was just like, I think of like a board, like a company board wants to solve a problem. If you hire 10 people that think similarly and have the same background, like they might be stuck on a problem, but like they're gonna take a lot longer to solve it because they all think the same way. So they're not gonna be like, oh hey, maybe like this is the issue, right? But if you hire like people with diverse backgrounds, like say this is like an engineering, there's like a CS company trying to solve like a bug, like 10 programmers may not actually expedite the process because they're all programmers, right? They're taught to think a certain way. But like say you hire like an actor, a dancer, like a businessman, a programmer, a doctor, like that might actually speed things up, because like each of them have a different perspective, like how they would use the products and like how, like what they want to get out of it, and like even the values they have, right? So I think in some way, like that's kind of why we keep on talking about diverse perspectives whenever we bring up about the podcast. I guess the meta narrative about this podcast, because like I think in some way, like, I kind of realized just, like, how short-sighted it is to, like, only wanting to try things because, like, they are known for that purpose. Because, like, a lot of inspiration comes from, like, various different stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you look at a lot of biotechnology these days, like, it's like, look at, like, windmills, right? Like, electric windmills. Like, that, a lot of that stuff is inspired by looking at, like, the fins of, like, dolphins or, like, whales, right? And, like, those are, like, before, like, biotechnology and stuff, like, those two fields were, like, not very relevant, you know? But being able to, like, look at that and just be like, hey, I think this can help us harness energy better, you know? Like, that's something, like, that wouldn't be done if, like, you're trying to follow, like, the traditional way, you know? You're like, hey, like, I see how nature does things. Like, let's apply that to something artificial, you know? Or even, like, the idea of, like, neural networks and artificial intelligence. It's just, like, I think seeing inspiration from different sources is, like, you know, that leads to, like, a lot of growth, you know?
Even to simplify it, like, I've done a lot of escape rooms with my friends, and, like, more people is always better than less people. I've never, like, been in escape room situations where less people benefits me. Because, like, everyone thinks differently. Everyone, like, their quote unquote box of, like, what they think is different. Like, they can be boxed around different things, you know, because everyone is influenced different ways, especially, like, if you don't grow up in the same place or if you don't experience the same things. Like, one person's box might be over here with, like, this stuff, and then another person's box might be all the way over there. So this person that thinks in this right side thinks outside of the box of the left side. And so it's just, like, encompassing more things, and you get more and more creative as you add more and more people of different perspectives. And just, like for example, one escape room, we just, like, naturally spread out to whatever we thought was, like, we were good at. Like, some people were, like, finding things, some people were, like, there was somehow, like, a math equation, so some people were, like, trying to figure that out. Some people were, like, some people were at the center, like, trying to connect everything. There were some people writing things out. There's some people, like, shouting things out to other people, like. And then eventually we started rearranging as, like, we got stuck, and we would, like, you know, like, I was looking around for stuff, and then eventually, like, I went over to, like, the table where we were trying to figure out the puzzles, and, like, you know, as we were rearranging, like, things just got faster and it got expedited because, like, more people were looking at it, more people had time to just, like, sit there and, like, think about it and just go, like, oh, you know, what if we tried this, or have you tried this, and stuff like that, and, like, going over the same thing multiple times, like, even we miss things too. And I just think it's, like, that's just, like, the simplest way of, like, showing exactly what we're trying to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I think even adding into that is, like, it's important, like, these are, like, a lot of people have different backgrounds too, right? And in some way, it's just, like, because I even on the converse side, it's, like, having a lot of people who think similarly is the same as, like, having one person doing it all, you know? Because that's just, like, validation of, like, thinking the same things. Yeah, so I guess even in some way, it's just, like, I guess, like, not going too hard into, like, have, like, it's not, like, about the quantity, it's about the type of people, I guess.
Yeah.
In some way, so.
I think it's something that you can't measure out, like, quantity versus quality.
Yeah.
It's not a measurable thing. It's just, like, I guess, increased diversity versus decreased diversity. And decreased diversity doesn't necessarily mean bad. It's just, like, you know, might take more time or it might take less time. You never know.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about people is that sometimes you just never know.
That you can't necessarily put them in a box, you know, or categorize them. I think that's what makes, like, life interesting is just, like, that people aren't formulaic. Like you can't define a person by, like, metrics, you know? Like, you can't just be like, this person is this, like, X, Y, Z trait. Like, all the R's, their personality. Like, I can do this and, like, manipulate them to doing something I want. It's, like, people can be unpredictable in some way, and, like, because people are more than just, like, their ideals, you know? Like, they're, like, living, walking contradictions, but, like, I think that's what makes, you know, kind of talking about the human condition so interesting, and, like, what makes discussions interesting, right? Because you never know how people will change and think in the future.
Yeah. And, like, going off of that, like, I think a really cool thing A game called Death Stranding released recently, and it was a whole bag of mixed reviews. There was a lot of people like going like, "Oh, this is genius," and there's a lot of people like, "This is so tedious and boring," and just like, is everything from extremely good to extremely bad. I've read a lot of reviews, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go and like watch it all myself. Like I don't have a PS4, so I can't necessarily play it, but I just went and watched all the cutscenes put together into a 9-hour, 20-minute video. And I watched it over the course of like a week. And I agree to both perspectives of like good and bad. Like there's a lot of points of like tedium that like the developer Hideo Kojima really wanted to impart onto the player, was that like connecting people is hard. Like it's not something that comes easy. And like a lot of people in gaming nowadays kind of want things to just be, as Kojima put it, like using the stick versus the rope. The stick, as he put it, was like mankind's first primitive technology that they used to ward away evil, per se. And then the rope was the second one that they used to connect people by like bringing things together, bringing people together, and just like connecting stuff, tying the knot. And that's why there's a lot of like references in the game to like connecting and like knots and like all this like random like metaphors. But like it's not, I don't think it's misplaced, because like it's very on the head on what it wants to say about like, for example, this dude is trying to connect all these various cities across the entire continental United States. That's not like some easy thing you can do, especially like considering there's all these like random monsters in the place. And like a lot of it is done via foot. And that's not like an easy process. And so the game really painstakingly goes to make the player understand. They want you to feel like each step feels like your own step, because they want to make it hard. Connecting people isn't easy. Mm-hmm. And they really like show that through like the story, the gameplay. Like a lot of it is just tying back to the central theme of the rope instead of the stick. Because like Kojima, as he put it, is like the stick is meant to like ward away evil, or like fight things, or like do something very mechanical, or like, but like the rope is more like dubious, and like you can choose what you want to do with it. And so I just thought this whole concept was really cool, and that like, you can't really dichotomize it too much. You can't box it, categorize it way too much, because it's a unique experience.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that he's wanting to do something like that, because like, I think, as you said, like there's a lot of mixed reviews, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something different. But I think it's really cool when people still try to do these things without regard to like critical reception or like monetary success, because like they want to push the limits of like the genre. They want to push the limits of like experience, because like they know like if they do this, like someone will help perfect this later on, right? Because I feel like when you start something new, like that's not going to be perfect from the start. And if it is, then it wasn't that new, or you didn't have experience. But yeah, even wanting to do that with just for the sake of the art itself, like that's really cool, Like I definitely respect that, especially in like an age where like everything is about the results,
Yeah.
Like how much can you, I won't say conform to the box, but like how much can you make things that like please other people, or like help them like reach a certain expectation, versus like how can we change the expectation, and how can we help them experience something new,
Like even to add to that, like this game is very about the process. Like the ending isn't anything big, Mm-hmm. It's not like some spectacular ending that'll blow your ass away. Like it's a pretty normal ending to a tale that is quite like tumultuous. It's like all over the place, and then it ends on just like a very calm note, because like all the loose ends are tied up. It's not like you're expecting like some huge ass cliffhanger to like tease a sequel. No, it's like complete on its own. And like I think that's like, to wrap this back to the podcast, it's about the journey. Mm-hmm. And like the reason the journey is so hard is like that's what makes it meaningful. And to tie this back to the podcast, like we don't do this podcast because it's like easy for us. Like we want to do it because it's like a challenge, and also because like it feels like it's helping us grow. It's like giving us something new, and like committing our time to a passion project is not easy.
For sure.
And that's why we want to do it, because like one, it's not easy, and then two, like it's something we care about a lot.
Yeah, I think, kind of like wrapping things up, because we're going a little over, but like I think like the idea of like doing what is necessary and doing what is extra is something that's like I think always been interesting to us, and that like you can do everything that's required of you to do, like do the minimum, even if that may be a lot, but just do the minimum in life, I guess, and just treat your hobbies as something like you just want to do in your free time, or something that like, you know, like you have a very separate work and like life balance, right? But I feel like doing like extra stuff, like maybe even like this, or doing stuff that like you don't have to do, or like doing stuff like you're not like necessarily need to focus on, like that is like interesting to me, or interesting to us in some way, because like you're still gonna get something out of this, right? But because you're going out of your way to do it, like how you experience it will be very different. Like if we were required to do a podcast, like this thing would probably spin out of control pretty fast.
Or it would end very fast.
It would end very fast, or it would be very robotic, right? We'd be very concerned about conforming to the rubric and standards. But it's like, I think something like in life a lot about is like, once you don't have the structure anymore, like how are you going to like fulfill those expectations, right? Because the expectations aren't coming from a defined third-party source like school or like companies. But while they may still play a role in your life, like a lot of your expectations are going to be coming from yourself now, right? Or people who don't necessarily have the authority, like friends, or they're not like an official source, right? Like how are you still going to like do things well? Like I know this sounds like a big contradiction of like the journey I said, but it's just like, how are you still going to like, I don't know, make the most out of like what you do, or like do things to a great standard when like you don't necessarily have to, you know? And I think that's something like we'll inherently be exploring like as we do this podcast, as we, you know, finish up school and move on to the rest of our life. It's just like, yeah, how much do we care about things like we don't necessarily have to care about, right? Because I think in the end, like that what makes things special is like when you go out of your way to do something like you didn't have to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we had a long conversation. This was very early on in podcasts, like more developmental stages, is like our expectations for this and like where we want to go moving forward, because we were having, I don't want to say conflict, it's just that we had different ideas or different expectations of where we wanted this to end up. Mm-hmm. And it was just a long conversation, and the end result wasn't we resolved anything. We're just like, you know what, we'll just see where this takes us, because like we can try to like structure it as much as we want, but that only takes us so far, you know?
Mm-hmm. I feel like as I said earlier, it's just like when you're focusing so much on the structure, it becomes about the structure versus the content, right? And I think right now, like we really just want the content to be good and to be impactful in some way, because like we're not really doing this to fulfill like a requirement, or like to be like, hey, look at me, like I do stuff outside of school, you know? Like, yeah, this is purely for fun, you know? So yeah, kind of just like wrapping things up once again, it's just like, yeah, we hope like you stay with us in this journey as we do this podcast. Yeah, we'll be doing more stuff like, but just me and Ben, so just the two of us. So a lot of the stuff will be like, you know, very abstract or deep, or kind of just like, why would anyone talk about this type of topics? But I think in a way it's just like, I think it's good to talk about stuff like this. In a way, it's good to introspect and see how things have been. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you're still listening right now, I know it's been kind of long and very vague and very unstructured. Like we've definitely, like this is kind of just like how me and Ben usually talk, you know? Yeah. Like we're kind of just like thinking and like talking about how things go and like letting things fall the branch. But yeah, I'm just glad you were here to kind of see a glimpse of like how we're feeling about this podcast. Yeah.
I think what helps that we got into the mood is that it's at 2 a.m.
Yeah, we basically have a lot of shower thoughts. At times we should take showers definitely by now. So yeah, maybe we should rename this podcast to Shower Thoughts.
Oh my! Then we're just stealing from a subreddit.
Oh, that's true. Just kidding. Yeah, please don't kill me. Also, Shower Thoughts. But yeah, in conclusion, to finally wrap this up, thanks for listening. We have a lot in store. We just hope to continue to grow, and we hope that you continue to listen to us as we do this. But yeah, peace out. Signing out.